Welcome to our weekly recap. On Sundays or possibly Monday mornings, I would be giving you a week recap on the week's topic, just a little review, and I will also be looking at the answers that you've given in the sharing sections of our presentation and making sure that I'm happy with your answers and clarifying anything. So that's what I'll do today. The first thing I want to discuss with you in our recap is just the directions in our brainstorming activities. Most of you did a great job in the participation activities this week. We had fantastic participation in our Two Truths and a Lie activity, and it was nice to learn a little bit about each of you. And then most of you answered all parts of the question in your weekly discussion thread. And I know we had 2 topics this week, so it was a little different than it will be from here on out. Within the actual presentation this week, you had 2 sharing sections and a voting section. The voting section, most of you put your answers in, and that was good. Make sure you go in and you see the answers if you participated early to that poll. And then you had 2 sharing areas. Both were on Padlet, and that's the web program that you were sharing in. The first one, you were sharing the skills that a child needs to read, and the second one, you were sharing what philosophy you were taught to read using and what you would use as the teacher of students in your own classrooms and what you're seeing out there when you're observing. So there are 3 parts to that. The 2 things that I see maybe missing in your brainstorming activities, one would be make sure you're answering all parts of the brainstorm question. Some of those questions just ask you to name one thing, but I know the last one asks you to name 3 things, and some of you only put answers to one part. You will not receive all your points if you don't answer all parts of the participation questions. The second thing is when you're sharing something online in a Padlet format or something else, make sure you put your name on it. I can't give you points for participation if I don't know who wrote something. There were 2 different answers on one of the Padlet forums that did not have names. So if that is you, make sure you go back in and you can edit it and add your name. I will check back. But those are 2 really important parts to our brainstorming. Since we're not face-to-face, I do need to know what's going on and who's doing it. So answer all parts of the question and then put your name at the bottom of your comments when you are participating. Now, the second part of our weekly recap is actually a little clarification and just I want to make sure that my point gets across. The one but the one question I ask you to think about is what skills a child needs to know before they can be a reader. And that's important for you because you may be a teacher of reading and you have to be able to assess all of the parts of the child, the whole child, to know if they're ready to be a reader. There are 3 biggies, and most of you touched on some form of this in your sharing. But the first one is called Concepts of Print. Concepts of Print is really a reading readiness skill, and it's a child's ability to know how books work. This can be assessed very easily, and we'll learn about this later in the semester, by handing a child a book. Do they know where the front of the book is, the back of the book? Do they know the parts of a book? Do they know that you read top to bottom and left to right? And do they understand the difference between letters and words and sentences? When they can show readiness in this area, that means they know how books work, and therefore you can put them in a book to become a reader. The second readiness skill is the actual reading process skills, and a lot of you touched on these. Children have to know the alphabet letters and be able to name them. They also have to know the sounds of most of them. If there's a few that they can't get, that's not a big indicator that they'll fail in reading, but they do have to know a very high percentage of the letter sounds. Along with letter sounds is combination of letters. We have a lot of crazy combinations of letters in our English language, and as we study the concept of phonics, we'll delve into this. But and the more they know about how sounds work in our English language, the better prepared they are to read. Another readiness skill would be a few beginning sight words. That takes a lot of pressure off a child when they know several of the very simple words on the page. And so a beginning base of a few sight words helps them become a reader quickly. Those are the main physical skills we need that are based on the concepts of reading. But there's two big indicators that a child is ready to read that does not have to do with that academic knowledge. A child with that academic knowledge is usually a good candidate, but if they're missing the next two things, they will not be successful and they will be frustrated. And that's the motivation to read and the attention to sit and learn. So you might have a kiddo who's 3 years old that learned their letter sounds and knows how books work because they're always being read to and doing fun games with letters. But if they're not motivated to know how to read, and especially if they can't sit for an extended period of time, at least 15 minutes, focused for 15 minutes on one topic, they're not ready. This could be a 7-year-old that has all the skills but does not have the motivation and attention span. And because there are main indicators that are very, very diverse, you will not see all children be readers at age 5 or at age 6 or at age 7 or at age 4. Children develop these skills independent of everyone else around them, and we can't expect children to be readers until they have all of these indicators in place. Otherwise, we're setting them up for failure and frustration, and as a teacher, that's the last thing that you want to do. So it's very important as a teacher, you know when each child is ready and that you're there for them when they're ready to get on board and become a reader. Basically, those are my big recaps for the week. I hope you are enjoying the course. Hopefully you're understanding the course. Next week, we have a lot of information on children's books and literature, and I hope you'll enjoy it. It's one of my favorite topics. And again, if you're having trouble with something, let me know. And if you're having technical difficulties, let me know, and I'll do my very best to make everything as easy as I can for you. All right. Have a great week too, and I'll check back in with our week 2 recap next weekend.